Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media, where we are decoding Trump tweets today of July 15th, 2018. Good to see you again, Thomas.
Good to see you, Betsy.
Now, the first tweet is a retweet. It's one that we talked about in our previous audio, but obviously the president wants to give it special emphasis. Maybe he's telling you, Thomas, that you didn't decode deep enough. So let's go deeper. The stories you heard about the 12 Russians yesterday took place during the Obama administration, not the Trump administration. Why didn't they do something about it, especially when it was reported that President Obama was informed by the FBI in September before the election?
Now, remember what we just got through telling you. Informed by the FBI in September that there was Russian meddling in the election. Obama did nothing. In fact, instead of an investigation about Trump and collusion with Russia, obviously, simply by this tweet alone, it should be reversed. It's Obama collusion with Russia now, isn't it? Obama did nothing until the very end when he put sanctions on them in some punitive fashion and then made repeated statements that none of the Russian activity affected a single vote. I want to repeat that. Obama himself, you posted just the other day, one of the quotes, the last thing he said before he left, got on the airplane, and got out of Washington, D.C. after the inaugural address and the inauguration was a clear statement, not a single speck of what they called the 10 incursions, and then it jumped up to 15 and then 21 spear fishing, supposedly with Russian footprints, GRU footprints left on the spear fishing. Not a single one of them affected a single vote. Okay, now if the President of the United States said this, then how can there be, what was he doing? Ignoring the December 2016 report, which was from the entire intelligence community, stating that there was Russian influence and meddling already going on through Russia Today, RT, the news agency, and through Sputnik, another Russian news agency. And then they analyzed it. They said they spent just huge amounts of money, a long period of time, many people, to put out a report that said two news agencies that they allow to be here that are Russian are having influence in our election. Well, of course they will, because those stations tell a little bit different story than the standard mainstream media. But so what? We have those same type of agencies in Russia and everywhere else around the world. So if you want to close those down, fine. But really, who even knew that RT existed or Sputnik existed? Very, very few people. It had very little influence. And the real influence, as we all know, was the $76 million that Obama paid to the British company, Strategic Communications Laboratories, to run the Global Engagement Center in a barrage of supposed Russian meddling influence. But it was really true meddling influence of the election, but it wasn't Russian. Some of the times they left Russian footprints. And in this recent indictment of these 12 Russians, which is just a joke, that are all agents of GRU, which they may or may not be. That's just Mueller wishing, hoping, and basically plagiarizing from George Webb's own lawsuit in 2017 against John Podesta. This is so utterly pathetic what has come out now, that this just shows that what we said was true. The longer Mueller continues this investigation, the more it's going to harm him and all of his people. So, why didn't Obama do anything about it? Because he was in fact the one doing it. And that is the deeper level here. Trump keeps repeating this. Why would they put it on Trump? It wasn't on Trump's watch. They love to blame things on Trump, that it was Obama who did it, and then the people who are on the progressive side of things believe that Obama couldn't have done any of those things. It's now coming out that when Obama invited unaccompanied adults to the southern border and promised them that they would be able to come into the country and they would take care of them, they found out that many of them were MS-13. Many of them were they were teenagers, but they had killed people already. They were trying to run from the law in the countries they were in. And they oftentimes, 20% of the time, brought in children that weren't theirs. So they came in with other children, playing like they were children. They weren't children. They were criminals, and in many cases, MS-13 and others. This is now coming out because the statistics are showing that during the Obama time, those children that came across, 400,000 children, they can hardly find any of them. They were human trafficked. They disappeared. They went into social services and now they're gone.
Well, that's good, and we know that's very important, but that's really not where we are right now with this tweet. The bottom line here is that Hillary and Obama, and really what we're talking about are the puppets of the globalists, were doing massive rigging of our elections. I mean, at so many different levels. But because the American people were so disgusted with Hillary Clinton, we got out there and we voted Donald Trump in. Well, that surprised them because they didn't expect to lose. So now they are having to cover up their crimes. And that's what we're watching even with, we call him now Rodentstein. Thank you so much for that YouTube commenter who provided that nice little moniker for Rod. But anyway, what we're seeing now is the covering up of their massive crimes, and it's becoming that the cover-up is adding to their criminality and is becoming messier than the crime itself, if that's to be believed.
Peter Strzok is a perfect example of that. He comes out so indignantly fighting against the congressional hearing, and basically everything he said was a lie, and every defense that he has was beyond stupid. It forgets the a priori assumption that the phone and the text were all government property. And now Judicial Watch is coming out to demonstrate that there are some of the text messages that he did not approve of. You know, he made a deal with Michael Horowitz. He would give some of the text messages out. Strzok himself, hello. He got to pick and choose which ones he'd give out, and he redacted what he wanted. Well, some of the unredacted versions have come to Judicial Watch, and they're being posted on their site. And they're cussing, and they're swearing, and they're even worse than the other ones.
But are they loving each other?
I haven't read all of them. I've just heard the reviews of them. I went to read them and didn't have time.
Okay,
so I can't wait to see if there are, because, you could be right. And I just want to say, sometimes, the whole conclave is wrong and Betsy's right. And it could be that whole myth about them being lovers was just so that they would not give out most of the messages because they're saying they're personal.
Okay, so I have a lot I could say, but since YouTube is forever, I think I'll hold my thoughts to myself on that one. Okay, next tweet. There hasn't been a missile or rocket fired in 9 months in North Korea. There have been no nuclear tests, and we got back our hostages. Who knows how it'll all turn out in the end? But why isn't the fake news talking about these wonderful facts? Because it is fake news.
And if you want to look, instead of talking about those facts, which how could you not talk about the fact that we actually are having relations with North Korea, and North Korea and South Korea have made up and kissed, and the border didn't exist anymore, folks. So you can go ahead and try to believe with all your heart what mainstream media says, which is that they have satellite pictures that shows that the nuclear proliferation is still continuing in North Korea and blah, blah, blah. Then, no. Here's what's going on. There's a deal going on, and they need to get out of the way of the master deal maker and basically stop all their negative projections, which is just projections and insinuations, and basically political assassinations, their ad hominems, their attacks, their character assassination of the president, and finally get behind him because, you know what? The rest of the world is realizing that he's in charge and that he's winning and that he is the superpower right now, and Americans don't know it yet because so many of the progressives are out there dressed up in funny outfits, and standing behind Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all these crazy organizations that are actually, people don't even know why they're out there on the street, just like the demonstration. So now the numbers went from 50,000 to 100,000, according to Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, with the resistance against Trump. He didn't count the fact half the people were out there for Trump. And there was, at the same time, the next day, a Tommy Robinson that was demonstration that was supposed to merge with the Trump demonstration. At the last minute, they canceled the Trump demonstration. Not one single aerial photo of any of that. But the aerial photos of the Trump, which they only had 50,000 people who actually came and got permission to be in that, they say it was 100,000. But you know what? That's okay, because we loved listening to Hannity talk to those people about why they were on the street. It's good humor.
Well, fake news. Not only is it fake news, the television is programming and brainwashing you. And we just had the most interesting conversation with a young man who taught us so much about that, Thomas.
Yes, he pointed out how easy it is that fake news inserts subliminal programming in everything. And he showed us the mechanisms and the devices and the choices and so on and so forth. So every time you're listening to any newscast, whether it's on your phone or anything else, if it's not coming from a trusted source, you can guarantee it's being subliminally programmed and you're being told what to believe while you're seeing words that say the opposite.
All right, now the next 3 tweets are all about Putin, so I'm going to read them all together and then you can go from there. Heading to Helsinki, Finland. Looking forward to meeting with President Putin tomorrow. Unfortunately, no matter how well I do at the summit, if I was given the great city of Moscow as retribution for all of the sins and evils committed by Russia over the years, I would return to criticism that it wasn't good enough, that I should have gotten St. Petersburg in addition. Much of our news media is indeed the enemy of the people, and all the Dems know how to do is resist and obstruct. That is why there is such hatred and dissension in our country. But at some point, it will heal.
It's never an accident when he starts talking about the news media being the enemy of the people, then he mentions the Democrats next. The same sentence. Because basically the news media is the progressive left, okay? It is so democratic. It is disturbing, just like the 13 angry Democrats on Mueller's fake special counsel, fake investigation. So what he's pointing out here is we have heard those news medias say that just to stop Trump's winning, they'd be willing for World War III to happen. They'd be willing for a recession or a depression. They'd be willing for the crash of the stock market. Anything to stop Trump from winning. Now, what's really amazing is that they could have an audience. But we talked with this young man today who, though we have done intelligence reports on this and we know this, we don't watch television. So we forget how controlled people are. We forget that your programming goes so deep that even when your phone is off, it's not only listening, it's also projecting. And these subliminal projections now can literally change your brain waves in ways, in fashions and mechanisms that I didn't know about. So I got to go to school today on some of this stuff, and it's most interesting. So in other words, the programming is complete. If you are watching mainstream media, even for a few moments each day, or even every other day, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're being so programmed that you probably can't get out of it, so that you get to see these nutcases come out and say that they'd rather see the end of the world than Donald Trump be successful for America.
So we could be on the verge of world peace here, which who wouldn't want that? And the left is screaming.
Well, who wouldn't want that would be the mainstream media. The mainstream media is the propaganda arm of the bankers and brokers who create war and bank and broker both sides and win, and also win with the victor.
And you have to tell people about Reuters. Who started Reuters?
Well, Reuters was independent until it was bought by the Rothschilds family, and it was basically their banking newsletter, which they found that when they used yellow journalism and made up news or reported news ahead of time or behind time, they could manipulate markets. And so he sent the initial Rothschild, who was with the Bank of England, who created their fiat currency, sent his sons out to 5 different cities in Europe, and they were using at first pigeons. And they were sending messages so that they'd always be ahead of what was going on with war, because war is where the money is. And so if a battle was lost or won, or if the army was mustering here or there, this directly impacted economies. So they had this network of pigeons. But when they got a very effective newspaper, Reuters, and a news service that then went all over the place, they simply bought it and controlled it. And then later they bought the Associated Press. Now it's owned by the independent agencies, but before it was owned by the Rothschilds family.
Yes, and so there you go. The media feeds off of this, what Reuters feeds them, which is really the banksters and the warmongers, and then feeds to the people so that we stay in dissension and these wars keep happening. So again, turn off the television and stop reading these publications.
Or do the following. Turn on all the channels that are mainstream media during news time and listen, and you're going to hear the same exact words. Why? Because the same exact words go with the subliminal programming that is going on below your the ability for you to hear it, below audibility, and then the rolling news at the bottom, whether you know it or not, you read that and it goes in. That's another subliminal programming. But everyone is reading the same script, and it's created by a group called AVID, ISIS Management. And that group is owned, of course, by the very evil people on the Privy Council in Britain who have been controlling yellow journalism for a long time.
Okay, now let's get to the exciting parts of these tweets about his meeting with Putin on Monday.
Well, I don't think that the Americans would even accept St. Petersburg and Moscow. They would probably, if Putin said, look, hey, I've always said we're not going to be a vassal of America. I've changed my mind. We want to be a vassal of America. No, they wouldn't accept that. If Trump said, okay, let's open Nord Stream 1 and 2 and undercut Angela Merkel, who undercut the entire European Union with her lying and cheating and her special deal with Putin, which now gives Trump so much leverage as he goes in there, he might be able to get, whatever he wants. He doesn't want anything. He's going in without any expectations, he said. But if he wanted Russia out of Syria, he could now get him out. If he wanted Russia to create a deal, strike a deal with Ukraine, and Ukraine to strike a deal with Russia for the pipeline going into Europe, he could have 3 pipelines going in from the largest oil reserves in the world. But no, Obama put sanctions on because of some mythical idea that the Russians meddled in the election, so he put sanctions on Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, though it wasn't completed at the time, and Merkel got around that, obviously. And why did he do that? He said there was no affecting a single vote. But what we hear now is a very disturbing news, and I think that's what you want me to talk about, right, Dan Coates?
Well, I am going to ask you about that, yes, because this was on Truth News headlines today. Dan Coates has sounded a red alert for cyber attacks, and that alerted me, but I don't see Trump tweeting anything about it. So is it fake news? Is it real news? What does this mean?
When Trump created the executive order that put us into a national emergency, which we're still in and he renewed, and he will continue to renew it, we are in a state of emergency because the U.S. Digital Service tied everything together into one centralized command and control center inside of the White House during the 2016 election so they could rig the election through Google, through Facebook, through all of the social media that was stolen by IBM Eclipse Foundation from Leader Technologies. And as he centralized all of that, he then created the ability for anyone to hack into our systems. And that's the reason that we've had such massive hacks. But that's also a warning that keeps being stated because our energy grid is extremely vulnerable. And I don't like to talk about this because we've already seen that it has happened multiple times, that grid has been damaged by a variety of things, and not Remember when every single day on the news it said that North Korea was going to drop an electromagnetic pulse bomb on America and it was going to destroy our entire energy system. We were going to black out for months and we were going to go into the dark ages, right? They don't even have that. And you can't drop one and do that. But what Dan Coates is saying is there's an extreme vulnerability to our systems. And basically what he's saying is we need the trillions of dollars Trump is pumping in now and needs to pump into the future, into our infrastructure, our digital infrastructure. And we need to stop selling it to corporate intelligence and corporate mechanisms like Amazon. Why are we using cloud service from Amazon?
Oh, because the government can't afford to create its own system. But Thomas, we need privacy. Will any of this start locking down and making sure that our information is private?
First off, you cannot give privacy on a system that is a publicly owned, a privately owned system like Facebook. Facebook has a user agreement that says they can rip you off of everything. You can't even imagine it. 660 some pages of a user agreement.
Yeah, but they stole their technology. Isn't anybody going to come out and yank that chain?
That will happen when the president signs the Miller Act request from Leader Technologies and says, yes, we'll pay you because we are using your source code. That is true. And if they say that it was open source code from IBM Eclipse Foundation, well, then, and they don't have it, and you have it, and you have the proof, and, well, you know, I want to go along with an administrative court decision that I'm going to pay this bill, and in paying this bill, those who then committed fraud against us, saying that they own those rights, and the government then bought into that, Remember, Amazon couldn't exist without government giving them tax dollars. Same for Facebook. People don't understand that Facebook is a psyops. It always was. It was a DARPA psyops and still is to this day. Same thing with Gmail, same thing with Google. It is all ran by the same group. And that is, as we have pointed out, the Highlands Forum or Highlands Group, which is the group that controls weaponizing these things. So, and then they also tell all the judges and everyone else to, who to put their venture capital behind. These companies that already have guaranteed contracts with the government. Why? Because they're monopolies with the government before they become public companies on the stock market. It is just a game, folks. You can trace all of them. So what is really going on here? Dan Coates was given an order by last January to stop surveillance of all Americans permanently by Trump.
Well, before you move into that, this is why we keep bringing up the leader technology stories, because folks, this is the globalist Achilles heel. And we all need to come together and make this right, because it will tumble all of these technologies. But when they fall, they're going to fall right in our hands, because Trump knows about this. It's like a controlled demolition of all these evil entities. So I'm going to put a link inside our description box that explains the Miller Act notice and what Leader Technologies is asking for, because it's something that all citizens, we need to get behind. We need to bring down Facebook. We need to make it a public utility, or at least something like a telephone line. Think about this. When you had telephone lines and you had a conversation with your aunt in Idaho, nobody told you what you could say to your aunt. There was no restrictions on what you could say. It was just a line, an open line. Well, what Facebook is doing is it's saying, oh, we provided the line and the channel, and we're also going to control what you say on that. This is outrageous. You can't have it both ways. So since they can't get their act together, and we know that IBM Eclipse Foundation and James P. Chandler stole this technology from this good man, Michael McKibben, that we have featured many times on this show, because we want you to understand what a good moral man he is and how he developed this to give it to humanity so that there could be a consciousness arise in the world that couldn't be without the internet. It was never meant to enslave us. People, familiarize yourself, please, with this case study, and let's continue to push it forward so we can bring down Facebook, Google, and all the others. Okay, now I've said my piece. You can go on to what you were going to say. I feel very passionate about it.
I totally agree with you, and I believe that the only setback there is that these private companies were created as private companies so that they could do this to us. The military couldn't get away with this. If we found out that the military was using a psyops that was as big as Facebook, and that we, the people, were giving our tax dollars to support it through subsidies and through experimentation and through the data that was then extracted from it, which is what is really all about. And we've already told you that Eric Schmidt has created your digital black box that they're going to allow you to live in when Alphabet takes over for Google. Now, that hasn't happened because Trump came to power, but it would have happened already by now if Hillary would have been elected. That's a fact. It was all laid out. He bragged about it. Now he's disappeared. He's left, and all he's is a supposed advisory capacity for research and development, which is, of course, a big fat lie. And we've been tracking him because everywhere he goes, he leaves digital mayhem in the totalitarian advances in China while he was there. Now makes it what they have is what's called social credit. It's a total monitoring system that even your friends, if you have a friend that the government doesn't like, that moves your social credit number down. That means you don't get certain privileges.
It's electronic caste system.
Correct.
And because, you have different levels. Okay, well, we got off the topic there. Okay, so back to Putin.
It's coming to America.
No, it's not, because we are awake and we're going to stop this.
Well, we would have to stop using the internet is set up as a weaponized system that got out of control, and now it's so out of control that the truth media turned on them and used the internet as a weapon against them. And so you now have, 60, 70, 80 of the top sites with sometimes more than 1 million followers, 4 million followers.
Yeah, they're being shut down.
Dropped, no reason whatsoever dropped.
Right.
So we have $100 billion lawsuit going against Facebook. Well, that's nothing.
It's against Google. Oh, maybe it is Facebook.
Well, there's the same kind of lawsuits are being proffered in Europe against Facebook and Google because of the lack of privacy. They're not going to win them, folks. It is not Google's or Facebook's responsibility to protect your privacy because the user agreement says they are going to do whatever they want with your data, period. And they're going to surveil you, and they're going to subliminally control you. That is right in the user agreement. Just read it. So here's the deal. You nailed it. It needs to become a government utility where they remove the surveillance. Now, when Trump was given the report from Dan
And the grounds
Coates,
to remove it is because it's based upon theft. And don't tell me they didn't take government money to develop this stuff. They did.
Oh, absolutely. And then, as you point out, they stole it from Leader Technologies. So that in itself could reverse the fact that these people think they own these things. They could, in fact, pare it back. But if they do, the back doors are still in it. So Michael McKibben's idea of a global, free, worldwide information system that liberated people from things like the Iron Curtain or religious persecution or no free speech or the lack of constitutional rights or human rights. That's what he was fighting against. That's why he moved from this very spiritual, gospel singing, putting his life on the line, going behind Russia, into let's work with the most brilliant minds there are and let's advance this technology, but let's advance it properly. He would have never allowed them to put the back doors in. Every one of those soy boy Silicon Valley cardboard cutout kings, except for Eric Schmidt, knew exactly what they were getting into.
He's just pure evil.
He's just pure evil. But notice what's happening to them. They're all going crazy now. Follow any of these fake people like Elon Musk, any of these people that they try to tell you, like Dude Zuckerberg is smart. They're not smart. Listen to them speak. Dude Zuckerberg couldn't write code at all. I don't believe he's ever written any code.
He could write a thank you card.
No, he's an idiot, and he only says what he's told, and that if you didn't see that during the congressional hearing, he knows nothing. And then on the next day, he comes back and says the opposite. And the next day, he changes a policy that shows that everything he ever said was wrong. He says he's not a news agency. And then he basically buys CNN. CNN would be dead without Dude Zuckerberg. And what did he buy it with? That's your money, folks.
I know.
Elon Musk, 45% of Elon Musk comes from taxpayer dollars. He has a monopoly in these areas that he's doing this experimentation in. He himself has done really very, very, very little. All of these people, look at their real history and then look what they do next. Look at John McAfee, okay? Do I need to say anything more than that?
Okay, we got way off the tweets, but...
Dan Coates has presented a plan, and the plan is there has to be RICO charges, racketeering charges brought against Obama and Eric Schmidt for the U.S. Digital Service. And he showed Trump the truth, because the truth is very clearly sticking in everybody's face. They bragged about these things, folks. We brought it to your attention through open source intelligence reports, many, 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 many of them, through documents that Hillary herself approved of from the State Department to write these manipulative programs that were used by Google and Facebook, okay? We've already given you that. So Dan Coates has that. He gave it to Trump. And what did Trump say? Holy moly, I'm going to have to be elected in a second term if I'm going to take down this much evil. Because why? All of our business is on the internet. We can't pull the plug on every microchip in every computer. We cannot pull the mechanical engine that rides on the back of that microchip, which then basically overrides all of your passwords, and there's nothing that you have hidden. There is no such thing. So when the report was given to Trump, and the facts, as we showed them, I'm sure Dan Coates has those, was shown to Donald Trump. He said, okay, well, what can we do? First thing we have to do, let's stir the pot with these cardboard cutout Silicon Valley boy kings. And look what's happened. One attack after having to pay fines in Australia, having to pay fines in Europe, pay fines in Ireland. They're collapsing. They're hiding and not paying taxes, going to Luxembourg and so on and so on. No, it's not washing anymore. In a matter of a couple.
But yet in the rigged stock market, the Facebook stock keeps going up. So that's why you know it's rigged.
Correct. When the confidence in Facebook is going down, when its membership is going down, when you see that on one day that he loses billions and billions of dollars and it's going down and his stock isn't affected, you have to understand that the stock market has been artificially propped up. And actually, Trump because he has taken over the U.S. Treasury, the stock market now is going up and down on a natural pattern. And for the first time ever, you are seeing that it isn't just completely rigged by high-frequency traders. It's actually responding to the market to some degree, but the market is rigged because the central banks of America, the 12 of them, are selling all of their stock that they bought up to inflate the stock market. Well, that's just simply going to cause a crash in the viability of cash being available to other banks for loans and so on and so forth. So it's still rigged, folks, but because Trump has come, it is not doing what it usually does.
The final tweet is congratulations to France, who played extraordinary soccer on winning the 2018 World Cup. Additionally, congratulations to President Putin and Russia for putting on a truly great World Cup tournament, one of the best ever.
Russia and China are trying to get the oil from Iran and from Saudi Arabia. And the oil from Iran, in illegal deals breaking the sanctions, were done between France and, behind the doors, Britain supporting France with Iran. So congratulations, France, but I'm afraid I also have to say I'm sorry for the fact that you've been called out for who you are, that you are, in fact, a friend of Iran and an enemy of the United States of America. And that's the reason that the European Union is still considering going on with this fake atomic deal. After Trump stopped the deal and put the sanctions back on, what did we hear? We heard their leaders saying, we've had atomic power all along. We've had the missiles. We have the largest, the second or third largest uranium deposits in the world. Did you think we weren't doing anything with it? You have Israel coming out and showing that their underground facilities, they were never stopped, and that their plans that they made years ago were revealed by Netanyahu. Of course, that isn't their current plans, but they're laughing at in our face because they now have the European Union kowtowing to them because of the fact that Iran is actually telling both the European Union and Russia and China that they can have the oil. You see, the pipeline going north out of Iran was cheating on the sanctions. The pipeline going due west through Iraq and hopefully someday through Syria will fulfill the dream of Iran, and that's what this is all about. So glad you won the World Cup. I'm glad that the World Cup, this soccer playing, draws the countries together in such a way in terms of unification for the time that they're watching it. I'm very sad to see the behavior of those people sometimes when they win, because it
Thomas,
turns into...
we know how you feel about sports. Let's not go there.
It goes into a little bit of wildness.
Yeah,
but congratulations to France. But, really, when was France ever our friend? That's what I'd like to ask. When was France ever our friend? And when we enter into these alliances with France, they barely ever pull their weight. But they're happy to give nuclear energy and nuclear proliferation to countries that are our enemies. So really, the European Union is not our friend. And France and Britain and Germany, the three big powers, look closely. They aren't our friend. And so really, I guess I have to say congratulations, but I'm also happy that you're being called out by Trump for exactly who you are, which is no friend of America's.